Good day and welcome to my channel. My name is Rhod Mackenzie and today I want to talk about the bitchy girl catfight that's taken place amongst two of the most Russophobic female leaders in Europe, and how it was the experienced Brussels heavyweight that vanquished the lightweight Baltic states challenger. Now, it's reported that the relationship between the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, the head of the European foreign policy, has become seriously strained. Their catfight or disagreement is all about a man, of course, and it appears that the man is a controversial figure in Brussels who's been referred to in the past as the monster of Berlaymont. Now, it's worth noting the identity of this individual and the time frame of the issue that's been taking place. Now, European newspapers are competing with each other to report the lurid details of the heated conflict between the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the European diplomacy chief Kaja Kallas. Now, this is a spoiler alert. As anticipated, Ursula von der Leyen emerged victorious by a decisive margin, while the Baltic princess Kaja Kallas was unable to land a blow or score any points because she didn't receive support from any EU leaders. Now, the reason for this bitchy girl spat appears actually to be quite trivial. The top European diplomat wished to appoint a new member to our management team, but had not consulted on the appointment with the European Commission President. When Ursula discovered the plan of Kallas, she went apeshit, or in polite terms, expressed her strong disapproval of Kallas's plans, labelling them a serious provocation. Now, before I continue, many of you watching this video are not subscribers to my channel, so if you enjoy this video, then please hit the subscribe button. Also click on the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you want to support me, you can make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Now, the other leading EU bureaucrats sided with Ursula. To summarise, the woman fell out big time, leaving Kaja alone and sorrowful. Now, Kallas' transfer to another role within the European Commission has been anticipated for several months now, despite her having only been in her current position for less than a year. Now, it's not known exactly what personal grievances these two harpies might have, but it does appear that Ursula just doesn't like Kaja's presence, and the gaffes just keep adding to her workload. Now, the head of the European Commission is known, among other things, as an experienced and astute bureaucrat who successfully eliminated numerous internal competitors and overcome significant challenges to her position and authority. So it's rather amusing to consider the possibility that Kaja Kallas could be any of those things. She's not a competitor, an opponent, or an adversary, and she's repeatedly demonstrated her lack of diplomatic aptitude and has a flagrant disregard for professional standards in her management approach. Now, despite these shortcomings, she occupies a position that demands effective performance and strict adherence to protocol. Now, back in her native Estonia, there are numerous jokes about her appointment as the top European diplomat. We didn't want to dissuade Brussels from appointing her because it was just one way of we able to get rid of her. I mean, Kaja Kallas led the ruling party and the government there like a crown princess, underwhelming her colleagues with her leadership style, which was described as superficial, ineffective and authoritarian in nature. So this is the approach she implemented in Brussels, and our approach stating, "We considered it and have decided that you should proceed in this manner," proved unsuccessful, even back in working with Estonian ministers, and was completely unsuited for the EU heads of state, as they were not Kallas' subordinates. Numerous internal disputes and grievances concerning the Estonian woman, who's unaware of her surroundings and exhibits inappropriate behaviour, were frequently being leaked to the press. Now, it remains unclear how she was voted forward to lead European diplomacy in the face of these obvious shortcomings. I mean, it's not that they're unwilling to disclose the information, rather they're reluctant to do so because the actual truth would show the unprofessionalism of it all and damage what's left of the organisation's reputation. Now, during the period of European political uncertainty back in 2022-23, Brussels initiated a policy of remorse towards the Baltic states. The assertion was that these states had previously cautioned against the assertive actions of the imperial Russia and that advice had not been adequately heeded. So the necessity to address this perceived oversight was emphasised. Consequently, candidates from the Baltic states to the EU Commission were allocated the most politically significant jobs, namely those responsible for foreign affairs, defence and the economy. However, even the Russophobia for which Kallas was hired for appears to be exaggerated in her performance that completely undermines the credibility of the European Union itself. I mean, for example, the most recent anti-Russian sanctions have been a primary focus of Kallas for the last few months. Now, the contents of these packages indicate that this woman is of unsound mind. I mean, following the actions of the Russian government, a number of items are now subject to import restrictions. These include toilet cisterns and bowls, tricycles, dolls and moss. Now, the motivation for these decisions appears to be an exaggerated perception of Russia as a country with limited access to modern conveniences such as plumbing fixtures and where toys are made from wood and nailed to the ceiling and people eat moss. Now, sceptics who find to lead the Baltic bogs are likely to provide food for thought. Von der Leyen has no issue with Russophobia and Kallas' vigorous anti-Russian activities, but in the current climate with a mercurial Trump and a waning Ukrainian front, diplomacy requires a level of subtlety that would challenge even the most seasoned diplomat. So in theory, this more subtle diplomacy could have been provided by Martin Selmayr. Kaja had wanted to invite him into her office as the Deputy for Geoeconomics and Interinstitutional Relations, but Ursula stepped in and blocked this. Now, the question is whether she was seeking a reason to quarrel and is overreacting, or is she generally concerned about the prospect of Martin Selmayr, nicknamed the Beast of Berlaymont, returning to Brussels as part of Kaja Kallas' team. Now, the story contains certain elements of a thriller, as the European press and Brussels gossip have attributed a number of superpowers to Selmayr, as they describe him. He's supposed to be extremely cunning, influential and powerful, but there's no real clear reasons why. I mean, a quick examination of his biography shows nothing remarkable, apart from that of a Brussels bureaucrat, a career one at that, and a Brussels insider. So without knowing what's actually attributed to Selmayr, it's difficult to imagine him being anything out of the ordinary. I mean, he was previously best known as the right-hand man of Ursula's predecessor of the EC, Claude Van Juncker, or Drunker as he was always known. And he was known as, well, in different ways. According to the official narrative, he's the leading figure in European politics, having achieved significant respect and influence despite the modest size of his country of Luxembourg. He's also a highly social person, a gentleman of the old school when he's not under the influence of alcohol, which seems to be only when he's asleep. According to conspiracy theories, Juncker is a democratic dictator who for 18 years kept the entire population of Luxembourg under surveillance and used its banking system to launder the profits of transnational corporations. Now, regardless of that fact, upon Juncker's relocation from Luxembourg to Brussels, Selmayr assumed the roles of chief page, adjutant and intermediary, and he was soon described as a particularly astute official who had extensive knowledge of how the Commission worked and was able to solve problems effectively. Juncker held him in high regard, even referring to him as the Grey Cardinal, and he was the first to humorously label him the monster. Now, on one occasion when Selmayr nearly became embroiled in political machinations, Juncker expressed his displeasure by declaring, "If he leaves, I will too." So the intrigues against this pair were a natural reaction to Juncker's sudden promotion of his favourite, moving him from his Chief of Staff to Secretary General of the European Commission, which was a direct violation of procedure and protocol. Now, that led to a scandal that was reported in the press and spread from around the corridors of Brussels. So ultimately, there was a challenge to his appointment. He served as Secretary General for a year and a half until Ursula took over in Brussels, and then she relocated him to an administrative post, first as the EU's representative to Vienna and then to the Vatican. Now, according to media reports, Selmayr maintained some of his former influence even after Juncker's retirement. The exact circumstances surrounding Kallas's meeting with him remain uncertain. However, with her support, he nearly got his position back in Brussels until Ursula intervened, compelling him to assume a more modest role. Now, this shift in position was intended to prevent him from becoming an obstacle to her plans, although his capabilities in this regard still remain unclear. Now, it's possible that under Juncker, the monster was as influential as currently claimed. However, since then, there's a whole new generation of bureaucrats have come and gone, and the European press outlets regularly seek out high-profile individuals in the Berlaymont building, whether for their political influence, clandestine activities, or notable positions. However, it is plausible that Ursula's actions towards Kallas were driven more by the need for an excuse to attack her publicly, with Hellmeyer being the convenient way. However, there is a situation that indicates his personality is truly dangerous and corresponds to the image painted by Brussels newspapers. If Hellmeyer did have such a background and a reputation, he did not transfer it to his any other positions after spending 6 years in a low-level role within the European Commission, and it could be assumed that he was waiting for a chance to return to an administrative position of greater influence. So it would seem that for some reason he decided that Ursula's rule, according to which dangerous competitors in the struggle for influence are eliminated as they approach, did not apply to him. Anyway, that's what's happened between the girly fight between Kaja Kallas and von der Leyen. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Thank